And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Welcome to the Politics, Prepping, and Paranormal Podcast.
Flibbity-jibbity nonsense.
I thought it was terrific.
It's not just big, it's
Let's go.
Welcome to the Politics, Prepping, and Paranormal Podcast. My name is Jeff Morey, and I'm your host. Before I welcome my guest this week, I wanted to say a big thank you to the good folks over at trueprepper.com. For the second year in a row and my second year in podcasting, I have once again made their annual list of the best prepper podcasts. While the list is technically a top 10 list, and I did not make the top 10, I did, however, once again make it as an honorable mention. Now, for some people, that may just seem like a participation trophy, but for me, considering also once again that my show is the only show that is not 100% dedicated to prepping, I'm honored for the recognition. Especially more towards the end of 2025, I did not do a lot of prepper-themed and preparedness shows at all. Well, this year I hope to change that. For me, being a prepper isn't just about preparing for the unknown. It's also about having situational awareness, not only of your immediate surroundings, but of our world and our nation in general. I am what is called a geopolitical prepper, meaning I watch and try to anticipate potential global instability and events that could potentially, and probably will, cause wars, famine, economic collapse, social upheaval, and a multitude of other potential doomsday scenarios. This is why we prep, and this is why the Second Amendment of the U.S. Constitution is so important. And this week, I'm honored to welcome a great patriot and a true champion of the Second Amendment. Her name is Gabby Franco, and she is a former Olympian, a firearms instructor, competitive shooter, motivational speaker, author, Army wife and mother, and you may also know her from the hit History Channel TV show, Top Shot.
From Venezuela. The official line there is that American freedom is a lie. Even if you don't believe it, you're supposed to keep it quiet. As a woman, as a shooter, as a Venezuelan and U.S. citizen, I'll continue to speak up for our freedoms. Because I know what can happen when people stop talking about their rights.
See, the problem is not doing too much. The problem is not doing enough of what matters.
So without further ado, I want to welcome my guest this week, Gabby Franco. Welcome, Gabby.
Hey, thank you, Jeff. Thank you for having me.
For anyone that does not know you, would you take a few minutes and tell them about your background and your story?
Sure. So I was born and raised in Venezuela. I grew up in a middle class, very driven family. My dad was just very, every time he saw a problem, he will always find a way to fix it. And I kind of got that personality from my dad in striving to do things. And he introduced myself and my siblings to the shooting sports. He went to the gun range to get a class to get his concealed carry license. When in Venezuela people were allowed to carry concealed, because believe it or not, people in Venezuela at one point were allowed to own firearms and have concealed carry license and all that stuff. And I went to the range, and I didn't necessarily fall in love with firearms, if you will, because I was always surrounded by firearms. My dad was an avid hunter. He was all the time going out and hunting, and we saw rifles and shotguns. But I did for sure fell in love with the challenge of trying to shoot a bullseye. Because the first introduction to us, it was not regular target shooting with a 9mm. It was actually an air pistol. He saw these kids at the range that were shooting these weird guns, and he's like, what are they doing? And that's when he learned that they had an Olympic shooting team, a junior Olympic shooting team. So he was like, I have 3 girls at home. So he brought us in, and how difficult could it be to stand up? I don't have to move. The target doesn't move. And shoot that target at 10 meters offhand, and the bullseye, the diameter is about 1 centimeter. I thought it was very easy, and it turned out to be very, very challenging. And every time, like, I guess that drive that I had from my dad, like, I tried and tried and tried, and that constant trying to do the best I could led to me becoming part of the state team, the shooting team of the state, then part of the national team, and until ultimately I went to the Olympic Games in Sydney 2000. Something that, to be honest, I thought only superhumans would go to the Olympic Games. As a teenager, that's what I always thought, but it was like surreal for me. And moved to the United States after a few years under Hugo Chavez, and hearing Cuban friends, who constantly talked about how Hugo Chavez was turning Venezuela was going to turn Venezuela into a Cuba. And I applied for an extraordinary ability visa with my background as an Olympian and all that, my curriculum as an athlete. And 5 years later, so I became a U.S. citizen. And of course, there's a lot more to my story. Like,
I'll say there's a lot more to it than that.
Yes. I mean, it's crazy. Sometimes I don't see myself as an old lady, although soon to be 45, believe it or not, and I'm very proud of that number. But I have had a life full of adventures, challenges, things that people would tell me, like my ex-husband, that I was a woman without motivation. Imagine that. And so,
told you that?
Yeah, no, it was.
Well,
crazy.
He was delusional, wasn't he?
But you know what? That's a part of that comes with, sometimes we forget who we truly are, and we get so immersed in what other people that are close to you think who you are. So what I'm trying to say with this is that I have, like everybody in life, I have had my ups and downs, like very lows and very highs. And the one thing that has kept me, everything together is what I've learned in Olympic shooting, the mental aspect, the mental performance, the thought of, okay, I'm low, I'm rock bottom, because I was there's nothing. And yet I can come out of here if I put my head into what I need to do. So that's a little bit of not only my background, but also my personality. Into life goes on, until that one right there, until God calls me to go back home. I'm here for the ride.
Your story is just, it's awesome and it's inspiring. Looking back, everything you've been through, everything you've done, is there anything you do differently at this point?
I don't think I would do anything differently, if you will, but I would probably approach things. And again, I guess it all depends with your age. When you're young, you take things so personal, right? To give you an example, there was an athlete, the father of an athlete, who thought that his son had more merits than I had to not only go to the Pan American Games in 1999, but even after I won the silver medal, who was Olympic Plaza, to go to the Sydney Olympics. He even sued the Venezuelan Shooting Federation to put his son in replacing me. Mind that I was national champion, I had earned my spot and all that stuff, right? And I actually had a conversation with people who were involved from the Venezuelan Shooting Federation in that early this year, because I don't know, the conversation came up and they even sent me the lawsuit because he, you know, and they were telling me, Gabby, he had no merits because the Venezuelan Shooting Federation had nothing to do with the Olympic Committee, right? The Olympic Committee says there's a woman who earned that spot. You cannot replace that with a man, period, no matter what. Especially in today, we don't know, right?
Right.
Unfortunately, but in 2000, that was a no for sure. And so I was so nervous, and that obviously impacted me, but I didn't know that. I didn't know that for sure, no matter what, I was going to go. In my mind as a teenager, just having the fact that somebody was trying to take my spot, I didn't know because the lawsuit, the whole thing ended like a week or so before flying to the Olympic Games. So all that stress, that mental stress affected, if you will, me in all sense as an athlete personally. And so if I could have changed something, anything, I would say would have talked to them, to those in the Shooting Federation, or would have hopefully, you know, they told me, Gabby, don't worry, nothing's going to happen. This has no merit. And everything is going to be fine. I don't think, probably I wouldn't have won a medal either way, but I think the experience would have been a little bit different. But other than that, all those experiences, all those challenges I have built, and I know it sounds cliche, right? Like, oh, well, everything I had in the past built who I am today. But it truly is, you know, it truly is. But I would say perhaps that would be the only one, just because it was very, very hard.
Yeah, I can only imagine. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? Don't they always say that?
It does, although you don't feel like it when you're going through it. You're
right.
like, this thing is really killing me, you know. And it's like that, you know. When my ex-husband, when we separated, and like I'm saying, he thought I was a woman who didn't have motivations, who minded. I had gone to Olympic Games. I have traveled to 12 countries before I even met him, and all that stuff. But I just in a week after, I lost my job. Like, I was rock bottom, dead and everything. But it's I have to say, more than that, it doesn't break you, it makes you, right? I think what it does, it transforms you. That time, not only, I think it's a different way of, I see it differently in that sense. It's not like it broke me, because when you're thinking that way, you're thinking on the negative, like why it did not happen, instead of thinking what really happened. And in my case, what it really happened is to transform me completely, internally, mentally, makes me stronger, right? Like you're saying, makes you stronger, but in the sense that I see myself in a different level, if you will. Like when you see yourself as a kid and you are not a kid anymore, you're a teenager. And you're not a teenager anymore, you're an adult, right? Now I'm not just an adult, but I'm a wiser adult. So in that sense.
Well said. Well, most everybody these days knows you for your work with 2A movement. You're multi-talented. You can do so many different things. You've done so many different things, but I know you're a strong advocate for the Second Amendment. I think one of my absolute favorite statements or quotes I hear from time to time is, there would be no First Amendment without the Second Amendment. And I think today more than ever that reigns true. Why would you say that that's true?
I guess the closest example I can bring forward is Venezuela, right? In Venezuela, we never had necessarily, I'm not going to say never, but at least for the past 50, 60 years, we never had something called the Second Amendment. I don't think we ever had something like that, even before. It was always a privilege. The government gave the people the privilege to own firearms. And what was that taken away from us? It was interesting because you couldn't defend yourself, right? But at the same time, you couldn't talk. Because those who were, for example, in this case, in favor of Hugo Chavez or supported Hugo Chavez, they were very aggressive in the way they approach you. They didn't care. It was not like, hey, I disagree with you and have a disagreement. No, they will be and attack you. And many of them were criminals who were supported by Hugo Chavez, and he let them use firearms. And so it turned out that it was the opposition who became silent. So there was obviously no idea of dissent. There was no the idea of trying to express yourself. It was not ever respected once that happened. And even before that, it was before that, Venezuela had a different a lot of, I would say, political parties, and people would have their disagreements, and people, brothers would not be brothers anymore because they hated each other. But it just ended like that. When Hugo Chavez came, it became violent, and when the gun control came, it just turned out in chaos. So I would say, the government, they control everything, and on a population they can control, especially one that is disarmed, there's nothing you can say, only to agree with them.
I had a guest on a while back, my buddy Jake Dines, the owner owns Tacticon Armament. He said it well. I asked him a very similar question, and he said the citizens should own as much firepower as the government, basically. He worded it a little differently, but I can't remember exactly how he worded it, but he nailed it. And I was just like, yeah. As politicians, and speaking of that, as politicians and special interest groups try hard to strip away our rights concerning owning and carrying firearms, what in particular do you see as the biggest challenges in the coming years, both in your now home state of Texas and in the United States as a whole?
For the Second Amendment?
Yes.
Well, I think most people focus on the federal level, and I think we need to focus more at state level. These little laws in here, laws in there. Oh, we're this state, this county cannot do this, and so it makes them a lot more difficult for us. And I think in a sense, it's just that Democrats are very, very bold in the way they approach. They are not trying to sneak in and trying to be, we're just going to cover what we want to know. They're actually very open on what they want to do. And I think even beyond that, I think the challenge we can be our worst enemy, okay, in the firearms industry. And I say this is because I hear a lot of people who say, oh, Gabby, thank you for speaking up. Or, oh, such and such, thank you for standing up and speaking up, but they don't. There were even statistics and numbers showing that the gun owners were one demographic that vote the less. And we have right now the second term coming, the elections in 2026, and so. We talk about, championing the Second Amendment. I love the Second Amendment, but then still that mentality of, that would, they're not going to do anything. I will have my Second Amendment forever. Well, they forget that quote is kind of a reality today because there's people who are behind the scenes really doing the hard work. On the flip side, many of those, believe it or not, not to shun on them, but some people have been doing it for so many years. They're getting older. Is it really a new generation who's willing to put their heart and soul into it and do the work, right? And so I would say that's a challenge that we have, not only now, but in the immediate, but also in the future, right? That we're becoming a society that we're so worried about so many things, social media and all this stuff, where we need to focus on things that really matter.
There's too many people these days kids that just, that's all they do is they spend their time on their phones and on social media. They don't get outside, period. They don't get outside. And shooting is just an awesome way to get outside and to gain skills, to gain experience, I don't know. I love skeet shooting myself. I got 2 kids now. I don't have a lot of time anymore, but I used to shoot for my high school hunter safety team, and there's nothing as challenging to me. I love shooting skeet. I wish, my dream is for us to eventually get a big farm and move out and have me a nice electronic skeet thrower that I can get out there and just shoot. And I'd love for my girls to grow up doing that, and I think too many people these days, kids just don't do that anymore.
And you know what? And even besides shooting, I think it's also important to make it more into the reading, explaining to children, because shooting alone is fun, but doesn't explain to you exactly why the Second Amendment is important, right? Just having fun, is that it? Right? Had a great time, great, but is that it? Is that why the Second Amendment is there? No, right? And so I think start truly teaching our children, not only taking them to the range, but could be weekly reading part of the Constitution, analyzing it. I mean, I'm an owl every time. When I just moved from Virginia to Texas just a month ago. And I lived there for about 6 years. And every time I'll go to see the Constitution, I was like, and reading about it, I'm like, this is just amazing. And so many people take it for granted, right? But, that's, I think, what we have to do also with our children is really reinforce that, the importance of it.
Absolutely. I think it should be required reading for elementary school kids. My personal opinion.
For sure. Definitely.
Speaking of 2A, there's a lot of organizations out there, that claim to champion the Second Amendment. What are your thoughts? Are there any organizations in particular that you think are leading the charge, so to speak, and are having the biggest impact?
Well, I think Gun Owners of America is a good one who lately has been they have been boosting a lot of stuff. I really support them and follow them. I think they're doing a very great job. I would say Second Amendment Foundation. They also do a good job out there. And there are also lawyers that they're not necessarily, part of an organization per se. Like I've been part of some briefs, and where I put my name, and it's very interesting that they are there, and I get their emails. So there are many people out there, interestingly, that are not the big names, but they're doing their part for sure in their state, right? Gun Owners America is a more, national, and we see the big names, the same thing as Second Amendment Foundation, but there are other leagues. For instance, I think it's the Citizen or Conceal, I don't remember their name, but they do an amazing job in Virginia. And in each state. So I really encourage people that although those big names are there, yes, support them because it's important, but also pay attention to the ones that are your local, San Diego Gun Owners. I know them too very well. There are many different organizations locally that they need your support, not only monetarily, although it's important, but also when they say, hey, this is happening in our state. This is happening in your county. We need you to come in and provide a testimony. We need these for, any other support that they need. Doesn't necessarily have to be monetary, but they probably need your presence and your support in other sense. So yeah, it's I guess in my position that I've been able to see the big ones, but also the big umbrella, how they also trickles down from state to state and from even different cities. It's fascinating and kind of give me that hope, right. Okay, it's not just the big names that we see, but there are other ones that also are doing their, little ant work, working hard in their states and also in their cities.
Yeah. All right. I want to shift gears for a minute. And
Okay.
what I want to ask you about, because I don't think there is literally anyone more qualified to talk about this subject than you.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on the current situation in Venezuela?
Mm-hmm.
And did President Trump and the United States do the right thing, removing Nicolas Maduro from office and expediting him to the United States to stand trial for criminal charges, including drug trafficking and narco-terrorism?
I do believe so. And I think the vast majority of Venezuelans who obviously those are not connected to the government would agree with that. President Trump did. Venezuela is an amazing country, not because I was born there, but Hugo Chavez, that socialist ideology, turned it upside down. And the problem with that, and that's what happened Maduro, is that when you give so much power to the government, and you may say that the idea initially was great, now we had a completely incompetent individual, very greedy, who didn't care about society, and now he has all the power. And this man for years was torturing, I mean, horrible stories about in Venezuela. And it was not only turning Venezuela into Cuba 2.0, it was worse because it was becoming the hub of cartels, of drug cartels, but also Hezbollah. I mean, people don't realize it. In the island of Margarita, there were even people were like, okay, this looks areas look like Muslims, Chinese, Russian. They were getting the oil for free, just for power. This was just an exchange of power. Not only that, they were giving money. We think about China, I'm sorry, not China, China, and Russia and Iran, but also you had Cuba, you had Nicaragua, you had Brazil, you even had Bolivia, who were literally draining Venezuela while the Venezuelan people were just suffering. And Maduro just made it worse. So what Trump did was not only something that Venezuela has been asking for years, but also what needed to happen, because I do not believe any other president would have the goals.
No, absolutely not.
That Trump has to do what he did. And so for sure, this man not only needs to, and you know, he's not the only one. He's just the tip of the iceberg, if we're honest.
Well, what do you think about Delcy Rodriguez taking over? Mm-hmm. Because she was a Maduro loyalist. Do you think that Venezuela is going to flourish under her leadership? Or do you think that, you know, if she doesn't basically follow the program with what Trump says, you think we need to remove her and put somebody in place that will?
Obviously, I don't know what Trump has in mind, if you will, right? I'm not in the Trump administration, but I would say that if this is a game of chess, I would say that keeping her was the right move, because, you know, people think it is easy to say, oh, you know, I'm just a president. Yeah, but you need to run the whole country. And if you don't have the people under you, if you don't know them, because one thing people don't know is that the vast majority of leaders from the opposition in Venezuela are overseas, right? So you can say all you want, oh, I am a good CEO, I'm a good leader, but you have never worked in that business. And you know, on top of that, you don't have a connection with those people that you're going to work on, you're going to fail. And so I think that having her for now, trying to move things and maneuver him in the way that he wants to maneuver is the right move. And I would even dare to guess that he's just telling her, you know what, you're not going to stay there. Flat out, you are right. Not going to stay there whatsoever. This is just your payment, okay? It is a payment. This is what you have to pay for everything you have done, and you're going to do what I say and how I said, and then you're going to get out, period, right? So this is, you know, obviously a long guess, but I think that that's a move. Venezuela wouldn't be able to succeed again, you know, under her lead, if she was truly leading on her own, you know, thinking and ideology. No, whatsoever. So especially when you have other people like Cabellos, which these people are just animals. Okay. they just treated other Venezuelans and the political prisoners like nothing. So they don't deserve anything. But if to maintain Venezuela in a good course, this is what I have to do, I do agree. And eventually change it. And I'm 100% well, not 100%. I would say 99% that that's what should happen.
You think the majority of all the citizens of Venezuela support what's going on and what's happened, what the United States has done and intervened?
It's difficult to say that with certainty because it's easy to say it from outside. Okay, I'm here at home, I'm safe, everything's fine. It's easy for me to say, yeah, everybody's, I cannot discount those who have spoken to and are concerned, right? Because sometimes, especially at the beginning, after everything that happened, they were saying, Gabby, everything is so calm, but so calm that gives you goosebumps, right? Instead of a calm that, wow, this is nice. No, it's a calmness that you don't know what's going to happen. And they started doing some arrests. If you had, that was one of the news a few days ago, that they were starting arresting people if you had anything related to Trump.
I've heard that. I've heard there's armed gangs, and I've heard some bad reports coming out of Venezuela.
Right. So it's not easy to say. It would be very, irresponsible for me to say that everybody's just super happy. I would say deeply, they know this needed to happen. But also it's the uncertainty, right? Again, that doesn't take the merit of taking Maduro. One thing the American people need to understand that there's no change doesn't come with consequences. And sometimes, it has to get worse before it gets better. Even a woman who gets out of an abusive relationship, it's not like flowers and party right after that, right? There's a process, there's a change, there's an adjustment. So Venezuela is going to go through a difficult time, I have no doubt. But it's a time, it needed to happen. So Venezuela wouldn't turn into, oh my God, worse than Cuba. Because Cuba had nothing to offer to anybody else, but Venezuela has a lot to offer. And Cuba, China, Iran was taking advantage of all of it.
Yeah, I think we're in it for the long haul. I mean, I think, I don't agree or necessarily support everything President Trump does, but I think, for the most part, he's a man of his word, and I think he's going to support Venezuela.
Yeah.
I think we're going to be there for the long haul to make sure that things get straightened out. And like you said, it's going to get worse before it gets better. I mean, that's just the fact of life. So
it does. And, some people say, oh, like I had some comments, oh, he's going to drain, Venezuela with the oil. I'm like, listen, let me tell you, how much would you pay for your freedom? And I see this situation with the oil like a business transaction, because money alone doesn't do anything, right? You can have a lot of money, but if you don't reproduce it, if you don't make more money, it's going to go back to zero. So the same thing in Venezuela. Venezuela, we have a lot of resources, which is only potential, right? We have nothing unless you turn that into something that you can sell, that you can make money out of it. It's almost like just potential, right? And so having instead somebody that can say, hey, you're the United States, I have all this stuff, I give you a stake on my business, right? Here's some, invest in me. You give me your resources, your intelligence, all the brains to make this work. Let's work together. And I think that's the problem that had happened around the world, that countries fought tremendously the United States just for the sheer of fighting. Oh, they're coming. And again, it may sound for some people, a little bit far-fetched, my thinking. But I think like that. I think you have to think about, okay, what do you offer? Are you going to help us be a better country? Let's go. Let's do it.
Right.
You know what I mean? But it's just this, like constantly the negative, like the Democrats. It's only, oh, this is horrible. I'm like, okay, most Venezuelans are cheering about it, and you're just crying for the dictator. How does that even make sense?
Well, they're gonna. It doesn't matter what Trump does. I mean, the Democrats are going to. They're going to find a way to twist it and to turn it against him to make him look like the bad guy. I love the memes that I say all the time that say for Trump's next trick, he's going to make the Democrats support Russia or whatever. And it's true, because it doesn't matter what he does. They're going to find a way to twist it to turn it against him.
Right, but I think it's the same. Right, but I think it's the same mentality when people think about the United States. Right? No matter what the United States says they're going to do in your country, and they're going to help you and all this, people, there's the government saying, no, they're just going to come and do ugly. I'm like, hey, I would, for those people who didn't like Trump before, I would say I'll change Maduro if I didn't live here, of course.
Right.
If I was in Venezuela, living in Venezuela, I would say change your Trump for Maduro, okay,
Right.
and make Venezuela great again. You know what I mean?
There you go. Well, we will. We will. Look, I appreciate your perspective on that, Gabby. That's like I said, I don't think there's anybody that is more qualified to talk about than you right now. So, all right, look, I want to congratulate you on recently earning your master's in sport and performance psychology, and also being nominated for the Gundy Awards. What's next for you in your career, and what's still on your bucket list of things you want to accomplish?
Yeah, so like you said, this was a great, win for me doing my master's. For those of you who don't know, I did my bachelor's and my master's back to back. I started my bachelor's when I was 38, without ever going to the United States, to school in the United States. I did my high school in Venezuela, so I never wrote a paper. I didn't know grammar, and I went straight to university.
That's
so
impressive.
for me, this is a huge, huge win. If I had a magic wand, and I would have to say, this is the job I would like to do, I would say I will work with astronauts.
Really?
Yeah, mental performance, or I like high risk. So that would be like my ultimate dream, right? Work in space programs as a mental performance consultant. And now, as I'm starting in this career and having my background and shooting, so my next one will be law enforcement. I do want to bring my knowledge in shooting, precision, but also mental performance with a better application, right? In a more personal and more detailed manner to help law enforcement. So that's the next. I'm talking to Walter Arms, who is my big sponsor. So trying to get those connections, get me, foot at the door, just because, as you know, I work with law enforcement in Pennsylvania, Washington State, Florida, but it's a tiny niche, and it's understandable. They have been, I'm not going to say hit, if you will, or so much negativity. So they're very guarded, and it's understandable. But I would like to work with them, working on a book, working on a children's book, nothing related with guns, nothing related with.
Oh, come on. I'd love to have my 2 daughters read a book about guns. I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, but actually it's just working on it slowly but surely. But it's a story of teaching children to go out and find true wisdom, what is out there. So hopefully I get it done in a year or so. So there's lots now for me. I'm new in Texas again, even though I lived here 6 years ago, and trying to get my way back into it. My husband is active duty, so his life is set. It's just the Army wives who are the ones who have to reinvent. We have to reinvent ourselves with every move. So and I love the challenge. I like it. It gives me an opportunity to say, okay, you did that before. This is another opportunity. What else? Let's do this a little bit different and make it work.
Right. I have zero doubt you can accomplish whatever you put your mind to. Zero.
Working on it.
Right. Well, when you're not shooting, training someone to shoot, or continuing education, or any one of a million other things, what do you like to do for fun? What's your spare time, and what's your hobbies? What do you like to do? Man,
my husband says I'm like, what is that? He says I'm like a Renaissance woman, because yes. Because if you're in my home, you would think there's 2 different women in here. One who, have guns, and you can see my backpack. I may have a knife or something like that. But I also do painting, crocheting, knitting.
I'm impressed.
Yeah, I love art. I'm very creative. I like designing. I love doing stuff with my son. And I like to create, like I tell my son, instead of like, we're about to get a new kitty, And he's like, Mama, we need to get him a cat tower. I'm like, no, we're going to make it. So
there you go. I like it.
I am like that. If I get my hands in with tools and create something, like build something, that's my ultimate. So I like that creativity, writing. So I do kind of quite a few stuff. Sometimes I'm like, which one I should do first. But if more than anything, I just love being a wife, believe it or not. I love being a mom, being, the house. And I do all the stuff I do, and very independent woman and everything in that sense, like we see in the modern times. But I love being a wife and a mommy. Mm-hmm.
There's nothing like being a parent, I swear. Yeah.
For sure.
Well, Gabby, thank you so much. I appreciate the time. I look forward to your future endeavors and just to see what you do next.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Politics, Prepping, and Paranormal podcast. Your source for real news and analysis on politics, prepping, paranormal, conspiracy theories, and the volatile state of the world we live in. Tune in next week and every week for a new episode, and stay safe, stay healthy, and stay vigilant.